Call the February 19th meeting of the El Paso County Planning Commission to order. I'm Jay Carlson, Chairman. Present and voting today will be Mr. Brew, Mr. Byers, Ms. Fuller, Mr. Moraes, Mr. Trowbridge, and Mr. Whitney, and myself. Do we have any announcements from staff?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. No, there are no, sorry, there's so many things going on this morning. I'm absolutely not paying attention and have just busted myself. I don't have any announcements this morning. I would ask Mr. Kilgore if he had anything for you. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Mr. Kilgore?
Mr. Chair, just wanted to give you an update. Staff on the 10th of this month took a small update to the land development code, but it was specific for the special district policies. So that was just heard by the board because it was special districts, which only go to the board. So it was a policy amendment for those. Okay. So it was related to revising to make compatible with the statute language, remove SOT language, and update the disclosure notice. So nothing too terrible, but Ms. Parsons is here today if you had any questions on it.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, I also have an update for you.
Yes.
So on February 17th, we did have one more appointment for an associate member. His name is Jason Wolf, and he will be getting through his orientation and then joining the board as well.
Oh, great. Now, when will some of those folks, after they get their orientation, that's when they'll start showing up?
So we have 3 members today that are going to go through their orientation. They will be able to attend the March 5th PC hearing. And then after that, I believe we'll be able to get Jason in as well. So I would say March 19th, you should be able to see all 4 names on the emails that get sent out and that kind of thing. So.
We're going to need more chairs up here, aren't we?
I know. I don't know how that's going to work yet.
We can do like a kids' table like we had to do back in the day. All right. This is a time when we'd entertain any one in the public who'd like to talk to us about something that's not on the agenda today. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak to us? I don't see any. We'll move on to our agenda items. Approval of the minutes. Anybody have changes to the comments to the minutes? Seeing none, we'll accept those as approved. So our one regular item today is agenda item number 5A, file number ID 256, Special District Service Plan amended and restated, Lorson Metropolitan District number 6. Parsons, we haven't seen in a while.
I haven't been doing any work at all, don't worry.
Phoning it in.
All right, thank you. So as you read into the record, this is an amendment to an existing special district. Specifically, it's to the Lorson Ranch Metropolitan District number 6 only, and that file number is LDC 261. Sorry a second. I'm sorry. Can I go backwards for a second? I think I got myself confused on something. I pulled up the wrong slideshow.
Yep.
I pulled up the presentation on the changes, not the actual hearing items, so I apologize on that. Okay, so this is the presentation since we're skipping over the other one. Okay, so again, sorry, this is for an amended and restated special district amendment to Lorson Ranch District number 6 only, and it's ID 256. Myself was the reviewer with assistance from Ms. Durham from engineering. Hearing procedure, so presentation, public comment, any rebuttal, questions, and then decision. More specifically, this is a request to reduce the existing District 6 allowance maximum debt from $80 million down to $58 million. The debt mill level at 50 stays the same. The O&M, or the operation and maintenance, stays the same at 10. They will still continue to do covenant enforcement, but they will not have a mill levy on that. They propose to remove the special purpose mill levy of 13 mills, which was intended for fire protection services. The district, however, will still maintain and own the existing hydrants in the development, which is very standard. Additionally, the district is requesting a maximum bond term length of 40 years, where 30 years is standard. So are there any questions on those specific requests?
Anyone? Don't see any.
Okay. Mandatory criteria and discretionary criteria on your screen for your review.
Thank you.
Okay, so the purpose of the district is amongst those that are typical before you, the statutory purposes: street improvements, transportation safety, drainage installation, basically all the public improvements that are needed for the development that we see typically with urban development. A little bit of history. Lorson Ranch is an overall development. 2004, the initial sketch plan was approved. Previously, we did concept or overall PUD zonings that kind of set overall density and land uses for the development area. And over the last 20 years, this Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners have approved multiple site-specific planned unit developments and subdivisions throughout the development. Currently within District 6, we have 220 homes approximately that have been built on the ground, and those are sold homes. It's important to note that the existing Lorson Ranch districts numbers 1 through 5 and 7 are not impacted by this amended and restated service plan. So those districts will still operate at the $80 million max let. They will still have that additional 13 mills for special purposes, whether they use it or not. So just to be very clear, this amendment is very specific to District 6 only. So here's just a depiction of the overall zoning of the Lorson Ranch development, and then more specifically, the area in black is the area for District 6. Currently, the existing mills you can see within District 6 are at about 150. Note that, again, this proposal would change the mill levy to a maximum of 60 mills. So I would intend to see a reduction, or anticipate to see a reduction in the mill levy next year if this amended and restated is approved. In terms of the master plan, of course, promotes that development continue to pay for itself. General conformance with the overall place tape at master plan was made at the time of the planned unit developments, preliminary plans, and final plats. And of course, water findings were previously made, as well as findings with the water master plan. In terms of the summary of the application, really briefly before I turn it over to the applicants, there is no other entity, city, county, that has the ability to pay down the debt. It's important to note here that the developer has already designed, constructed, and financed all of the needed infrastructure for the overall development. So the functionality of this proposed amendment will allow that developer to be paid back by the district for the eligible improvements. The district's engineer has certified the improvements in the ground. And so much of the improvements have been turned over to El Paso County, such as road infrastructure. Wide Field Water and Sanitation has taken over the water and wastewater infrastructure that the developer designed, construction, and paid for. And it is very typical of a district to pay back the developer-funded agreements. And so this is the vehicle to do so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So does that mean there are no additional infrastructure construction requirements? So everything is finished and we're just going to pay back the developer whatever the appropriate costs are and then pay off the bonds moving forward?
There are very minimal additional infrastructure requirements. Not everything is in warranty at this point in time, and there's some minimal infrastructure that will need to be added, but nothing substantial.
Okay.
Again, this district exists today, so
Understand.
the developer could essentially pay themselves now, but they're refinancing it mostly to get that lower tax rate and a 40-year term on the bond. So normally we come to you with a district that is anticipating a 30-year bond with a 10-year finance, which ultimately results in a 40-year term. This is different because they're not anticipating a finance, they're going to go for the 40-year bond term. Now, it is important to note that this district is still compliant with the state's new legislation that was passed limiting a district to a maximum of 40 years unless that district goes to its a board and gets a vote to extend the overall debt longer than 40 years. And the applicant is going to go into detail about that if you have further questions on that. That's all for staff. If you don't have any questions for me, I'd ask the applicant to come up.
Whitney?
Just a quick question, Ms. Hart. So although 1 through 5 and 7 are not impacted by this application, the total indebtedness for 1 through 7 remains at $300 million though, right?
Sir, I'm not prepared to answer any questions about those districts because they weren't in my review. So I can't, but I'm hoping maybe the applicant can. And the president of the development is here, so he may be able to, Mr. Marcus here, he might be able to answer those questions.
Questions? Thanks.
Thanks, Carrie. Good morning. My name is Laura Heinrich. I'm an attorney from Spencer Fane. Also with me are David O'Leary from Spencer Fane, Blaine Matthews from Piper Sandler, and Jeff Mark, who's a member of the developer team. We are here today to request that you approve the amended and restated service plan for Lorson Ranch Metropolitan District Number 6. This district was formed in November 2004, along with Lorson Ranch Metropolitan District Numbers 1 through 5 and 7, and they all currently operate under a consolidated service plan. The district is generally located east of the intersection of Mark Scheffel Road and Fontaine Boulevard in El Paso County. And the district consists of approximately 292 acres. It is within the service areas of Widefield Water and Sanitation District and Security Fire Protection District, which will provide services to the district. The primary purpose of the amended and restated service plan is to allow for the district to issue bonds in 2026 with a maximum term length of 40 years, exclusive of refunding and refinancing. And this will minimize annual payment amounts and interest rates and give the district more funds to use for public improvements. This satisfies El Paso County's special district policy, which requires specific justification for longer repayment terms on the bonds. Other purposes of the amended and restated service plan are to decrease the debt limit for District Number 6 only from $80 million to $58 million. And I'll go ahead and answer the question that was just asked. There's an aggregate $300 million debt limit for all 7 districts that will still be in place. The amended and restated service plan adds the statutorily required maximum debt mill levy imposition term. It eliminates the special purpose mill levy of 13 mills for fire protection services because the property within the boundaries of this district has been included into security fire protection district. It is anticipated that 995 family units will be built by 2030. There is a continued purpose for the district. The main purpose right now will be to finance the public improvements that have already been constructed using public financing tools. And then upon build out, the district will operate and maintain district sidewalks, a detention pond, monuments, and open space. This district provides covenant enforcement and design review services as well. The public improvements are substantially complete. Public improvements totaling approximately $58 million have been constructed for the project. Public improvements in the amount of approximately $47.2 million were certified by the district's accountant, as well as an independent engineer, and accepted on October 22nd, 2025. These slides just show maps, public improvement maps that were included in the amended and restated service plan. Here you'll see public roadways and then open space and park areas. Next, I want to talk about how the district will go about paying for the public improvements and ongoing services. And the answer is that the district will issue bonds or debt in a maximum amount of $58 million. As I just stated, the public improvements in the districts are substantially complete. The maximum debt maturity term included in the service plan is 40 years, not including refundings. And the maximum debt mill levy imposition term is included in the service plan states that the district shall not impose a debt service mill levy for a single property which exceeds 40 years after the initial imposition unless a majority resident board votes in favor of a longer term. All of the mill levies, there are mill levy limits in the service plan that have not changed. The maximum debt mill levy is 50 mills. Maximum operations and maintenance mill levy is 10 mills, and then with an aggregate combined mill levy of 60 mills. This slide just shows a calculation for what the impact that this district will have on a $500,000 residence. Our calculation came out to $2,040 in taxes owed per year, which is $170 in taxes owed each month based on a 6.8% residential rate. Here you'll see the development summary projection from the financial plan that we included in the model service, or in the amended and restated service plan. The second to last line, you'll see there will be 995 units, and it's anticipated that the statutory actual value will be approximately 497,500, 500 million. Approximately. As demonstrated in the chart below, the projected revenues generated from the development of the district are sufficient to retire all anticipated debt to be issued by the district. There is a summary of the bonds that the district is hoping to issue in 2026 on the right side of this slide. These will be tax-exempt bonds. The par amount will be approximately $45.9 million, and then the reimbursement will be made in the amount of approximately $45,793,000. The debt service mill levy that will be imposed is anticipated to be 50 mills. The interest rate is 5.5% with a maximum imposition period that we just talked about of 40 years. The district is currently subject to many transparency and disclosure requirements. The district currently files an annual report with El Paso County, holds an annual town hall meeting for residents where residents are notified ahead and they can attend to learn about public infrastructure projects in the district, and also will learn about the financial position of the district. The district currently maintains a website as required by statute. There is a procedure for call for nominations to go out to eligible electors in the community so that new homeowners will be made aware that they can run for the board. Next time this will happen will be May of 2026, when there will be an election. There are also annual transparency notices, and there are disclosure requirements for builders. They have to disclose the district, including expected future property taxes to potential homeowners in sales contracts. And now, pursuant to House Bill 25-1219, all sellers of residential property will be required to provide such notice. We respectfully request that you approve the amended and restated service plan for Lorson Ranch Metropolitan District Number 6 and refer it on to the Board of County Commissioners. We believe that we have met the conditions for approval. There has been a significant amount of infrastructure already constructed that needs to be financed through these tax-exempt bonds. There are no other entities that are able to finance these public improvements or provide the ongoing services that I mentioned earlier. And the district will be required to issue debt in 2026 within the confines of the service plan. And the financial plan attached to the service plan shows that the district does have the ability to discharge the debt in a reasonable amount of time. But with that, I just want to open up the floor for questions.
Fuller.
Carrie had a slide that said that the mill levy is 67.3 right now, but I thought they were capped at 65. Was this originally approved with a higher mill levy?
So I am guessing it's at 67 because of the mill levy adjustment. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And then this may be a rookie question, but basically the cost is 47 million and the bond max is 58 million. Why is that? Is that to account for the interest and some working capital to pay that, or why is that different?
We always leave a bit of a cushion in there, just should the new board members in the future want to refinance, or with inflation, the costs of the improvements might go up. So we just always leave a little bit of a cushion in there so that, and plus there's the cost of bond issuance that we also need to take into account when we determine the maximum debt limit. But as you know, we have lowered the debt limit that's already approved for this district from $80 million to $58 million. So this district's actually ending up with less of the piece of the pie of that $300 million that I discussed earlier.
Okay, understood. But it's all pretty much built out.
It is built out, yes.
So 20% contingency seems pretty high. I mean, is that normal? I'm trying to learn from this because we haven't seen one come back to us. And you know what the cost of issuing those bonds are.
I'm going to have Dave.
Okay.
I'm David O'Leary. I'm with Spencer Fain as well. Usually we allow for a contingency, so sometimes that contingency is there just as there's a couple reasons why you would have a contingency in there. When they go out to the bond market, if they're going to refinance this, sometimes the ability to have that contingency is helpful for them, even though they aren't going to use it. In this circumstance, we're issuing bonds to a private entity, a developer-related entity that's going to be taking the bonds. They're going to be cash flow bonds, so there's not a coverage ratio that's necessary in these bonds. They're a one-for-one, and they're cash flow bonds. So what that means is whatever the mill levy generates is that's all there is available. When you go out to market, sometimes you have to have a contingency in a straight out to market issuance. You're going to have a surplus fund, you're going to have a reserve fund, there's got to be contingencies in and out to market issuance. In this instance, they're still tax exempt, but they're cash flow bonds. So the requirement for a reserve and a surplus isn't there on these types of bonds if you were going to go back to the market in the future. So, and usually you would do that with a residential board if they can get a net present interest savings. And that's one of the standards in order to keep a tax exempt rate on the bonds. If it could result in a net present interest savings to the residents, it may need to be bigger in order to do the issuance, but it would probably shorten the time period because those reserves would be there and available to be pulled on to make those bond payments. So that contingency is there for future refinances if they have to do an out-to-market issuance and the costs of that issuance may go up. And it sounds counterintuitive, but when you go out to market, there's additional contingencies that have to be put into a bond issuance that's not a cash flow bond. And we have someone from Piper Sandler who can explain that as well. In this issuance, the reason why we're able to issue it at a tax exempt rate as cash flow bonds at a 5.5% and like just a 1-to-1 coverage is because it doesn't have any of those reserve funds, surplus funds, any of those contingencies that a market bondholder would require. So that contingency is there if the resident should choose in the future to refinance those bonds, and they may be willing to capitalize the interest that has accrued that hasn't been paid.
Okay, that was my question. So you can end up increasing the principal balance if it doesn't build out as
Correct.
anticipated. Well, actually, it probably would at this point.
It would be a financing issue, not a build-out issue.
Well,
So-
because you're not going to be collecting that upper mill levy on the improved value.
And typically, a bondholder out to market is taking that risk that it's going to build out as anticipated. In this instance, because of the type of bond, the risk is always going to be on the bondholder. In this instance, they're just taking it as cash flow. So if it doesn't build out as anticipated, they're taking the risk that it doesn't do that. So the risk to the homeowners is their mill levy. The risk to the bondholder is this thing doesn't build out as anticipated and it doesn't pay, but at the end of the term, it discharges.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. So the bond would be issued for like 47 million.
Correct.
And then if there's not enough mill levy collected on the properties to pay the interest, that 5.5%, whatever isn't collected, that goes back to the principal of it. So it can increase. Is that part of that 20% contingency?
At the end of the term of those 40 years for a bond like this, it gets discharged. And
Yes, but what happens
but if
right now?
Right now, it's cash flow. So if they don't build out and that assessed valuation doesn't hit the maximum, that 40 years at the end of the term, it's gone.
But it's like 2.5 million of interest every year on that.
But it would accrue.
Okay, and then so
That
it
would
is
pay-
owed.
It is owed, but if it doesn't pay off in the 40-year term, it's gone. So if they don't build and the assessed valuation doesn't catch up, there's no additional kicker for the developer to collect that additional interest. It would be discharged at the end of the term. If you go out to a market bond, same thing would happen, but it would probably be at a higher interest rate. You need additional insurances and coverage ratios. And because of that coverage ratio and those contingencies, the actual cost of the bond would be higher, if that makes sense. Because there'd be a principal and interest reserve, there'd be a surplus fund, and there'd be a reserve fund. So a percentage of the bonds that are issued out to market are reserved, and the net proceeds would go down. Does that make sense? And I have Blaine here who can explain that as well, but
He can nerd out with us. Great.
he can nerd out with you. But
Yeah, I just want to understand that because it's like there's, probably 300 correct ways to fund this
Correct.
bond. And so this is the one that you're choosing. I just want to understand, that 20% is a lot for just, issuance. So clearly there's something else going on there for it to be that high. And I want to understand because people ask about that. And
Absolutely.
I truly want to understand these metro districts and how it affects the future property owners, because it's the ones in there now, they get it, but it's the fifth person down the line that we really want to have this understood.
Understood. And I'll let Blaine answer
Okay.
some of the geeky, nerdy kind of things.
Hello, yeah.
Hey, no,
Sorry.
take it.
Blaine Hawkins. I work with Piper Sandler, where we work with special districts like metro districts all day on underwriting their debt. So happy to answer any questions related to that. I think as far as the $58 million number, I believe that's correlated with the amount of improvements that it could be put in here as a maximum. And then the debt sizing that we're looking at here, the par amount of the bonds, that $45 million number, That is more of a product of the revenues that we are projecting will be collected via the debt service mill levy. So the revenues are only projected to be so large, and thus the bond amount can only be 45.9 million. If there were more revenues, that bond amount could be 47 million or 48 million, but based on the projections, which is that build out schedule and inflation rate, we only project revenues will support a bond in the amount of about $45.9 million. So that's more of a product of all these calculations of this revenue stream that's shown here on the screen.
So it's governed by the actual cost,
Correct.
and
the
then
math.
the current board of this metro district can decide the financing structure.
That's correct. Within the constraints of the service plan, which is your 40-year imposition term and then the 50 debt service mills. So within that box, this is the financing that can be supported.
Okay.
Other
And if
questions?
this bond was, if we did not approve the adjustment to the service plan, this project would still go forward. It would just have different structure.
And so the current structure, and that's the original parameters that Laura talked about. The original structure was 300 million for the entire project. Each district is capped at 80 million. And normally, bonds are typically issued on a 30-year basis. It can't go more than 40 years because that's the maximum mill levy imposition term. That still applies. No residential property can be assessed more than 40 years pursuant to your code. So we're in that parameter and we can't exceed it. In this instance, the proposal is to issue a tax exempt bond over a longer period of time in order to access this type of structure for financing, which allows a lower cost on an annual basis to the residents. It is an interest savings because right now this thing is taken at whatever the interest rate is on the promissory notes, which are taxable right now until we issue a public bond. If we went out under normal course, if you don't approve the amendment, they still have the ability to issue under the parameters of the original service plan, which would be up to $80 million. It would still be in compliance with the original service plan. The staff and the county have requested that we cap. So the reason for the reduction in the cap is we don't need that extra contingency because of the structure that we're proposing. So we're reducing it down to the 58. The contingency is intended to allow for a refinance in the future. If the residents, when they take over the board, which will happen, choose to do a different type of refinance and go out to market and do this, they may have the ability to do a shorter term. Just it's like a mortgage, but it's kind of not like a mortgage. So,
No, I get it. So
I would envision it as you have the ability to issue better bonds if you have more equity in your house. Right now, we have 220 homes that are in there. We will have 1,000 homes at full build out. At full build out, we
that's
have.
scary. Yeah, from a lender.
It's scary for the number of units, but it's great from a financing perspective because you can get a rated and insured deal. So they could go out and get a rated and insured, go through a rating agency and get Standard & Poor's to give that and get insurance on it that could potentially reduce the costs. But you have to hit a higher build out in order to do that. So we're issuing earlier, but because of that, the risk is on the bondholder, but and I don't know if I'm answering your question.
So the developer has a private loan right now that is anticipating payoff from this district. And so that's the rate difference you're talking about?
Yes, and if we did nothing to this, and if you didn't approve the amendment, it would continue to pay. It couldn't go more than 40 years. It would potentially issue bonds. We wouldn't be able to cut it off other than the 40-year term. And we go out to market and maybe issue a different size of a bond. It might have more costs to it, and we'd have those contingencies that were issued in there as well. The reserve, the surplus, higher interest rate because there's not as much assessed valuation in there to justify a full out-to-market issuance. If we are at full build-out, you can get a lower rate because you have more equity in the house. If we're out early and we've got 220 out of 1,000, the market's not going to look at that as favorably. So your interest rate would probably be significantly higher if we were out to market.
So the developer's cost of funding, that gets reimbursed by the bond?
By the proceeds.
Okay, because they can't do it for free.
No.
I mean, There's no free
And
money.
that's what it
I
was
just want to
intended.
understand. I really, I'm learning here.
No,
So I
you're fine.
appreciate your grace.
No. You're fine. And ultimately, the developer's goal is to get paid back.
Yeah.
For the infrastructure that's in there.
Absolutely.
Service plan is structured to allow that to happen. We're just proposing, we're requesting this variance on your existing structure and what's in your current plans that you normally do in order to access this type of structure that they're using. With regard to the other districts, 1 through 4 is built out. Those are financed, each district finances its own debt. And that's why you have 80 million per district in each of those districts.
Yeah.
All of that's already financed. So we don't need to affect or adversely affect any other district. This is self-contained in District 6 only. So all the undeveloped stuff is in 5 and 7, and that stuff's going to get built out later. And we may be back in front of you to do an initial bond. But all we're doing right now is District 6.
Got it. Thank
The
you.
only people that get affected are the District 6 boundaries.
That's it for now.
Thank you for that lesson in lending, Ms. Fuller and you guys. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Moraes.
Hey, could you just go back to slide 11? Just again, another education point. Okay, so just a couple things. And that third bullet down in the debt says the maximum debt maturity term is 40 years, not including refundings. What does
So-
that mean compared to 40 years?
So your service plan model allows for refinancing or fundings if a majority of the boards are residents and they vote to extend the term. So it wouldn't be a developer decision, it would be a resident board decision.
Okay.
And refundings typically don't get charged against both the limit and the time period if the residents are choosing to do that. The reason why they would do that is, again, if you can get a net present interest savings, or there's a reduction in the amount of interest, or market changes hit, they might decide in year 10 of these bonds that are out there, hey, we're at 3% again, and we're at COVID rates. We can get 3% loans, and we've got excellent credit. We've got 600 houses that are in there. We have the ability and the financing and the assessed valuation to do this. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it on a new 30-year term in year 10, which would extend past the 40 years. But that 30-year term may be at 3%. And the term may go longer, but they would never do it if there wasn't a savings. And no resident's going to vote for more taxes for a bigger thing. The only reason that this would happen on a refinancing and the only reason that a refunding would occur where the term would be more than 40 years is if there's a way to get savings. And I liken it to the whole thing that happened during COVID because we had phenomenal interest rates and some of them are at 3 or 3.5% on public finance debt. You'll probably never see that again. I just don't know. He would know, but I don't think you're going to see rates like that. But if it happens and lightning strikes, the resident board is going to come in and say, we want a new 30-year term bond. We've paid 12 years on this bond. We've got the assessed valuation to do it. We're going to get a rating and insured deal. We're the residents. We're majority controlled. We're deciding to do it. It's in the best interest of the district. We're going to save $20 million in interest and pay this thing off in 30 years. And that would be the thing that we're talking about for a contingency. In that circumstance, it may be a bigger bond for a shorter period of time, but the interest savings could be $10 to $50 million over the full life.
All right.
of the
And
bond.
in your case, you said it happened at year 12, the residents voted. So then it would then become for a 30-year, after 12, it would be 42 years worth of. And so then just going here, so this 40-year bond that would start after this service plan puts it,
We still couldn't do more than 40 years from the date of the first debt service mill levy imposition term. So it can only max out at, I think it would be, the 40-year term is for the structure of the financing, but the reality of it is to the extent that there's a debt service mill levy imposed, it shortens the time period. So it'd probably be like 38 years total.
but let's go back to the first resident that moved in back in whatever year that was. What
Just
is
a couple
that
years
per-
ago,
What,
yeah.
what year? Is the 40 years starting now, or does it start back from when this district already started?
When the first resident started assessing a debt service mill levy,
Okay, so whatever year that was, 2020.
22.
Okay, so we're only about 3 years into this thing.
So you're 3 years
into
into it. But they can't go more than 40 years total
from that first resident.
from the first debt service mill levy imposition from that resident.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
So it's really a 37-year bond right now.
I have one more question.
Yes, Ms. Fuller.
So from a sources and uses, you can get up to 58 million, 47 to pay off the documented construction costs. And then what are the other uses?
For the bonds,
Yeah, so.
that's it.
So
It can only reimburse capital and infrastructure that's already been constructed.
Okay.
It can pay for new stuff that has to be built,
got it.
or it can pay for interest or accrued interest if you capitalize that interest. That's it.
So interest from the developers' funds as part of that,
Interest on the existing bonds.
that are the private bonds, or not the non-public bonds?
Yes.
How much is that? Do you know?
The interest accrual right now,
Mm-hmm.
well, we just certified the capital costs.
That's included in the 47 million?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so they're capped right now. We certified that just last year, at the end of last year, in anticipation of the ability to issue the bonds. So the interest that's accruing on that is accruing from the date of the certification in October 22nd of 2025. So that'll just sit out there and collect whatever interest is on that note. But it's taxable rates, it's renewed on an annual basis. This allows us to finance it and lock it. And the interest will be locked at the 5.5%, and that's it. The only time that we're going to come back and refinance this thing, like Commissioner Morales had indicated, the only time we're going to do that is if it is a resident board that's voting for it. It can't extend beyond 40 years, so back from 2022, no matter what. And if there's a net present interest savings that the residents are choosing to do.
Yes, sir.
Staff has a clarification point, if you have a moment.
Sure. Guys, don't go too far. I've got a question for you.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to go over a couple points. So initially, when the applicant submitted their amended and restated service plan on first review, staff negotiated with them and said, hey, you're asking for 80 million to remain. You're asking to keep the 13 mills for special purpose, and you're still asking for the 10 mills, which was the 73 mills. In 2007, when the Board of County Commissioners approved the original service plan, the ask was over the policies. It was approved at 73 mill levy. So in negotiating with the applicant to get them compliant with the existing policies and model service plans, we worked together to say, hey, let's eliminate that 13 mills for the special purposes. You don't need it, because you can utilize the financing and design and construction under the water services for the hydrants. So that allowed us to get rid of that. They didn't need the additional 5 mills that's allocated for covenant enforcement, so we erased that. So yes, the mill levy is going to go down from the maximum of 73, capping out at 60 with this. And then based on the certification provided by their engineer, staff negotiated for the same rationale that you are pointing out, Ms. Fuller. You don't need the $80 million. Most of your infrastructure is already in. Caveat, in 2016, staff went to the Board of County Commissioners as a requested amendment to the service plan to allow a 35-year maturity for bond. So currently today, all of districts 1 through 7 have a 35-year bond allowance. So really, they're only asking for the additional 5 at 40, but their current bonds, it sounds like, are still at 30-year bonds. So sounds like they didn't actionize that 35-year, that they technically were allowed via the 2016 approval. So does that kind of fill in the blanks a little bit there in terms of maybe what you were thinking? Okay. Anything else for staff? Okay.
No. I do have a question for you guys. I think it's for you guys. So you answered part of it earlier when you related it to a house payment, saying that the mill levy, the mill levy for finances is, the annual payment, if you will.
Correct.
You're reducing your amount that you're looking for by 27% or something, and you're increasing the term by 33%. Seems if it were my home loan, there'd be a significant reduction in my annual payment if I did that.
Well, and as staff indicated that in 2016, we did extend it. I forgot to mention that as well, but they did extend it to 35. So truly at this point, we're asking for an additional 2 years beyond what we can do right now. Mm-hmm. It is when you're asking for additional term or additional amount, because additional amount shrunk.
Right.
additional term is
Extended, yeah.
netting 2 years.
Okay. So I'm just wondering, forgetting about the stuff that you carved out
Right.
through negotiation, wouldn't there have been a pretty significant decrease in the mill levy just on the finance side of it?
There could have been, yes. But we do have the ability to go all the way. Right now, we do have the ability to go under the original service plan to what they had indicated at 73 mills. We just don't need it anymore. So we threw away the things that we don't need, and we're just honing in on what we actually are going to use now for this particular type of financing.
I guess what I'm asking though is, did just the financing part of the mill levy go down from what it was before? Again, separate from the carve-outs you guys made.
The answer would be no, it is not going down in this financing. However, with future financings, given the flexibility of the extended term here, those resident boards will likely have a greater opportunity to then reduce the mill levy on an annual basis. So those savings aren't going to be realized today with this issuance, but with a future refinance, that's going to be investment grade or insured and at a lower borrowing cost. Residents will likely be able to realize greater annual savings through that refinance. So savings don't necessarily arrive on a taxpayer basis today with this financing that we're talking about here, but likely those will be achieved in a future refinance given the added flexibility of a longer debt service term.
So the original amount that they were looking for, forget what was it, 80 million?
80 million.
Is reduced now to 58, but there's no change in the payment amount annually, is what you're telling me? Wouldn't that get
From a mill
resolved?
levy perspective,
Yeah.
it does drop on a mill levy perspective as the aggregate mill levy that's imposed on that district. So they actually are going to realize a reduction in their mill levy as a resident, but the amount that they're going to assess and collect for the debt doesn't reduce. The total aggregate mill levy that they're assessing will reduce because we don't need the 13 mills. We don't need, all the extra stuff. And we do have some assessed valuation now, which is allowing us to finance it at the rate that we're doing.
I understand that part. I'm not calling those the carve-outs that you guys did earlier, okay? What I'm getting at is the cost of my house is $1 million or whatever. Now I only want 750, and I'm extending the term. My payment should go down, and you're telling me, no, we're still going to charge the same amount as you paid on your $1 million. You're either going to have a lot of money left over at the end of the loan, or, I'm just wondering if the homeowners are going to see that benefit or not.
Right now, they're looking at the same snapshot that they're looking at right now. So it's still going to be the 40 years for 50 mills, whatever it is with the adjustment.
And it may get paid off earlier, is that what
It
you're
may
saying?
get paid off earlier if they do a refinance. If the assessed valuation comes in higher than anticipated, they're taking the risk that they're going to continue to build like they're building. But if it does, then absolutely they're going to refinance this thing. I would.
Yeah.
Because, it's like taking a 30-year mortgage and you've got equity and doing a 15-year, the interest rate would be lower for a shorter period of term. Same kind of concept.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm just not, from your perspective and his perspective, it adjusts because of the math. So lawyer math,
Which I'm not good at.
I
All
have
right,
one
any
more.
other questions?
One more. So the current homeowners that are in there now, they're not part of this board yet?
they are not. We've had elections every 2 years. So
Okay.
we're required to disclose, and they've continued to change the disclosure requirements, the election requirements, and the annual report requirements. But every 2 years, we have an election. The board serves at staggered terms. So the mechanism is already in place that they can run for the election, that they can sit on the board. There's never been a resident that stepped forward in District 6. On the other districts that we have 14 residents on districts 2, 3, 4, and 1.
Okay, and this question might be for staff. Have any of the current homeowners weighed in on this? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there's one question since we're talking
right.
about governance. Are these districts, the boards specific to the district? Correct, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, each individual district. And the reason why there's developers on the board, and you may have that question, but the reason why there's developers on the board right now and continues to be on the board is the board is initially made up of the tax-paying electors in the district. When you have raw land, it's the developer and their representatives. As you build out and as you get residents, they have the ability to sit on the board. The additional disclosure requirements that already exist both in writing from a builder disclosure and from the district and the things that we're required to publish and post and do all those other things. Now we are providing, every time we have an election, we do postcard notice, we do publications, we have district websites. They have social media things. We don't get involved in the social media stuff because that's a different creature altogether. And we don't do that. We're the public entity, so the outward facing district website and all those disclosures and all the information regarding the district is now more disclosed than it ever has been. And when there's an election coming up, they're going to get it in mail, they're going to get it in a postcard, they're going to get it in publication. So their ability to run for the board is out there and residents talk. And as elections come up, we have a bunch of people that are serving on the other boards, and that will happen in this district as well. It just hasn't happened yet.
Just for education, how many of the homeowners have to vote in order to elect someone?
To elect somebody, it's a majority of the people that vote. They vote for whoever's going to
Oh,
be
and it's just a
running.
board vote, though. It's not the homeowners.
The homeowners vote for the elections.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what happens when we have an election come up, and this is what happens with most developer districts, as elections come up, some of the board members will be up for reelection. And what happens in a lot of our elections that start to have the attrition and turnover, residents will run for a board. If there are equal to or less than the number of candidates on an election, we can cancel the election instead of go forward with a full-blown election. What happens on a developer board, when the residents step forward, they'll typically just step off. So we don't have to go through the full costs of an entire election with 1,000 ballots and all the property owner notices. What happens and has happened in those other residential districts, when those residents step forward, we have developers that'll volunteer to step aside for reelection, and then we can cancel the election and save $30,000 to $50,000 on the election costs just to put the residents on the board.
Is there a minimum number of residents that have to vote, though? I mean, 1,000
No.
houses, I can't imagine
So
that
1,000 houses would
25
have,
of them are going to vote.
well, and 1,000 houses would have husband, wife, any kid over 18, if it's owned by a property owner and rented. So you have the residents and any residents over the age of 18 that live in the house, and any property owner that owns real or personal property in the district, and their spouse are able to vote. So even though there might be 1,000 houses, you could have 2,000 voters. If that election goes forward, there's a potential of 2,000 people voting, but it's like any other election. A lot of times you'll have less than 2,000, and I would say significantly less. But it's a majority of the people that are voting
Gotcha.
is what decides a vote.
Right.
Just like a normal election.
But you didn't think this was going to go this long, did you?
That's okay. That's what we're here
We're
for.
getting granular, so
No, it's okay.
let me get a little granular.
Okay.
Just for fun.
Sure.
So how big are the boards?
The boards are typically 5-member boards.
Okay.
That was set up originally by statute. There have been changes, so this is an older district that was formed in 2004. There's an ability to do either 5 or 7, but if you wanted to expand the district board from 5 to 7, you have to have a special election. And the statute now, it gets really fun. In the election stuff, if you go from 5 to 7, you can never reduce down from 7 to less. And you're stuck at 7.
Okay.
And eventually, some of these things are going to consolidate, so that gets even more fun. And the intent of the districts primarily is to finance infrastructure.
Right.
The secondary intent is to operate anything that the county doesn't operate. So they take care of their covenant enforcement, they take care of non-pot systems, they take care of their parks, they do social kinds of stuff that communities do. If there's a community center, they do that. But eventually, when we hit full build out on all of these things, the administrative costs of running 7 districts and all the elections and budgets and all that other stuff gets really expensive. But when we hit full build out, those residents sometimes get along with each other and they'll agree to vote for a consolidation, and you got to go through a consolidation election. And there's an expense to do that. But I've had districts that now, because I'm old, I've had districts that have been in existence for, anywhere from 10 to 25 years. And those consolidated districts, there's a cost to do that consolidation election. But when you're done, you have one budget, you have one audit, we have one board of directors. It's a representative of the entire community instead of District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doing different things. They'll all get together, and believe it or not, sometimes they actually get along. And then all of a sudden you have one district, and then instead of 5 times or 7 times the costs, you got 1 time the cost. There's a cost to consolidate, but when you get to that point, the intent of the districts is to finance the improvements and just stay in existence to do operations. And they can do whatever they want. I had a district that paid off its debt and it decided in year 25, we want a pedestrian bridge to connect these guys over here to these guys over here. So they agreed to extend the mill levy in order to finance a $500,000 pedestrian bridge so they could feel connected. Because the people over here didn't feel connected to the people
All
over
right,
here.
we're going to try and move on here. Is there any other questions pertinent to today's details?
Sorry.
All right, thank you. All righty, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, what's that? Yeah. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak in favor of this item? Seeing none, anyone who'd like to speak against this item? Seeing none, we don't have anybody online, I'm assuming. Okay. All right, I would, is there any other discussion before we entertain a vote? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
with regards to agenda item 5A of file number ID 256 for the Special District Service Plan amended and restated Lorson Metropolitan District number 6, I move for approval in accordance with the attached resolution with 6 conditions and 1 notation, and that this item be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners for their consideration.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Byer. Any other discussion? All right, take the vote. Mr. Brew?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Ms. Fuller?
Aye.
Mr. Moraes?
Aye.
Mr. Trowbridge?
Aye.
Mr. Whitney?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so agenda item 5A, file number ID 256, Special District Service Plan, amended and restated Lorson Metropolitan District number 6, passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Any other announcements or anything from staff? Great. Thanks, we're adjourned.